You shoot in a 6K, you drop it into a 4K timeline, and somehow you're zooming in just to make it fit. That makes zero sense, right? Today, I'm going to show you the real reason your high-res footage doesn't line up in DaVinci Resolve, and that one hidden setting that fixes all of it instantly. Let's break it down. Oh, real quick. If you guys caught last week's video, that obviously wasn't me on camera, right? That was my amazing, talented wife, Taylor. Honestly, she nailed it. She broke down Ryan Trahan's editing style in a way that actually made me rethink a lot of my own cuts. Like, she's a mastermind editor, and she's taught me a lot of things. I just love the way that she edits. And the other thing is that video is actually even a part of a fundraiser that we're doing for St. Jude. And, we're trying to support Ryan Trahan's mission. So if you haven't checked out that video or you guys just missed it, it's worth going back to and checking out. It teaches you a lot on different pacing structures and editing structures. So go check it out. But today we're going to be back in Resolve. And if your high-res footage keeps looking zoomed in, I've got a simple fix for it. Like, before we fix anything in Resolve, though, I feel like we got to talk about something that a lot of people are not really explaining well, and that is aspect ratio. Because I feel like most people in this industry confuse it with resolution, and it's obviously not the same thing. Resolution is all about size. It's how many pixels you're working with. And then we got aspect ratio, which is about shape, right? It's the relationship between width and height. So you got width, height, right? It's the frame that tells your story, and it's the frame your story will live inside, and it literally affects how your audience feels, whether they notice it or they don't. Like, let's talk about 1:5:1. It's a little wider than 16:9, but it was used in the classic film Jurassic Park. They wanted something that felt natural and something that could take the audience into that environment. And obviously, it's not too wide and it's not too tight. It's just perfect. Like, you get immersed in that wider atmosphere. And then we got a super wide aspect ratio of 2:3:9:1, which is classically used in a lot of action films. Think of like Batman. Which obviously I wasn't the biggest fan of, but they use 2:3:9:1, right? And a lot of most modern features do. This actually gives your shots scale and space, and it's dramatic and cinematic at the same time. And then we got our standard HD, which is 16:9, which is what you're watching right now. And it's great for people that are making content for YouTube, for social media, for documentaries. It's a go-to kind of format. And then we got our 4:3, which is boxy and intimate. Do you guys remember the old TVs? I don't know if you guys were around the era when we had the big TVs with, no universal remote. You had to switch dials and everything like that. Those were run off of a 4:3 aspect ratio. And a lot of films back in the day used that 4:3, not even thinking of, what it can actually do to the audience later on when we were filming 16:9. Like, all TVs now are 16:9. It just makes the world feel closed in. Like, if you're watching a 4:3 on a 16:9 TV, it makes you feel claustrophobic, right? It makes you feel like something is happening, like you're in the character's mind and you're just feeling closed off and boxed in. There's actually a reason it's coming back, and it's for that emotional, character-driven piece, right? And a lot of people use it as a stylistic choice inside the film. So they'll go from 16:9 or a 2:3:9:1 and squeeze into a 4:3 to really get you into that character's headspace. It's very cool. Of course, I never actually used it myself, but I've always wanted to actually film a whole piece in 4:3. I just haven't had a chance to do it yet. It all comes back for emotion. And then we got our 9:16 and 1:1. And these are just mobile formats. They're used and designed for reels, for shorts, for TikTok. Like you've seen it everywhere, right? It's becoming the norm. And it's not immersion, but it just is vertical attention. It literally all comes down to intent. Like everything needs to have motivation and intention behind it. Like you got to think of the questions. Why do I need to shoot in this certain resolution? Is there a reason why I have to shoot in 6K versus 4K? Because to be honest, there's not really many TVs that have a 6K ability, not unless you're spending thousands upon thousands of dollars and then you get 6K. Yeah, it's not doable. Unless you're actually doing VFX, you're not going to need to shoot in 6K. Got to live with intention in your mind as a filmmaker. And that is the main thing that I want to get across to you guys is that living with intention, living with motivation. Why are you doing it? That's the big thing that you got to keep in your head is the question, why? You got to think also like, what do you guys want to do with that aspect ratio? Do you want scale and atmosphere? Well, then you can use 2:3:9:1. Or do you guys want a character-driven immersion? Well, then you could try 1:8:5:1, which actually drives your characters in that atmosphere. And then you could also think about like, do you guys want intensity or isolation? Then if you want that isolation, like we talked about, you're going to use 4:3. And lastly, if you want something platform friendly like YouTube, then stick with 16:9 or vertical just to be consistent. And honestly, you got to be consistent about your aspect ratio. Like consistency is key. You don't want to be bouncing around without purpose in mind because it just makes your projects feel messy and it makes it feel messy fast. And all of that will bring us back to resolve because if your footage doesn't match your timeline shape, things are going to start looking off. And that's one thing that I was frustrated with for a long time with DaVinci Resolve, and I couldn't figure it out. But like literally, I was working on a 4K timeline, and I had 6K footage, and I'm like, well, why do I have to zoom up? Like it didn't make sense to me. And honestly, I think that a lot of us go through that same frustration. Like, why are we having to zoom in? It really doesn't make sense, right? Because if your footage doesn't match your timeline shape, things are going to start looking off. Look what you can see here. Okay, we got our crop bars on here, right? Let's first look at our project settings. There's two ways to get into your project settings. You can go into your file and go down to project settings, or you can go down here to our mechanics little thing icon. I don't know what you guys call it, but this is your project settings right here. Okay. And right away, you're going to see your master settings. So this is your timeline resolution, right? So you have a lot of different resolutions you guys could go with. And we have this set to DCI scope 239, which is 4096 by 1716, which is a true 2:3:9 ratio. So what we're going to do here, though, is I want to first back out. And I'm going to show you guys the resolution that we're dealing with. So I'm going to right click on my compound clip and open in timeline. Now, we have three different cameras that we're working with. Our first camera is our B-RAW, which is 4096 by 2160. This was shot on the Pocket 4K. And then we have our B-RAW, which is Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6K. And this was shot in 6144 by 3456. And then we have our red, which is 5120 by 2700. Now, here's the problem is that our timeline is set to 4K, right? But all our cameras are either at that resolution or higher. So why am I getting these crop bars on the sides of my image? Well, it's because of the width and the height of the image that you actually shot. And before I discovered this issue, I would have to go through the whole timeline and scale up the image manually, which took excess time, and it was just a nightmare to do. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go back into our project settings, and we're going to go image scaling right here. And underneath your input scaling, you're going to look at mismatched resolution files. And we're going to say, right now it's set to scale entire image to fit. And that's what's happening, right? It's just scaling everything to fit within that frame. What we want is scale full frame with crop. So it's going to crop in that image to fill that whole frame, if that makes sense. So we're going to go ahead and click save. Now look what happens. It automatically fills everything. After you get this done, it should automatically update your entire timeline, so you don't have to go back in and have to readjust anything. Everything should be in that aspect ratio. And that is what's beautiful about it, is like I don't have to zoom in anymore. I can literally just run and go and do it. All right, let's just say that you want that aspect ratio of 239:1, but you don't want that crop factor that you're going to have because you shot in a 16:9 or a 17:9 aspect ratio. What we're going to do here is we'll go into timeline and we're going to click output blanking. And these are different aspect ratios right here, right? We got 133, 166, 177, 185, 2, 235, 239, and 240. So let's just say we want 239. Well, if we click on 239, it's already there because obviously we have this set. So we'll go to project settings real quick. And we're going to click on, let's go to 2K 16:9. Okay. And on this, I'm going to also change my image scaling back to scale entire image to fit. Okay. And underneath our output blanking, we could click on any one that we want. So we could go on to 185. We can go into 133. So this is our, 4:3 aspect ratio. And doing this, it automatically sets everything on here. Now, keep in mind that this is not the true aspect ratio. And what I mean by that is that when you're watching it on a widescreen TV or in theater, it's not going to reflect that full aspect ratio. Why? Because you're in a 16:9 aspect ratio and you're cropping in. So you're getting your own crops, your black bars on top and bottom or on the sides. It's not that true widescreen format. So the only way to do that is setting up your project settings correctly and going back in here to your master settings and say, okay, I want that 239:1. And doing so, well, now we have that true aspect ratio in a characteristics of 4:3. But let's just say that we don't want this. We could go in here and go reset and go back into our image scaling and fix everything. Okay. Boom. So yeah, that weird zoom in look on your 6K footage, it's not your camera. It's just DaVinci Resolve doing what it thinks you actually want. And you got to be in control of everything. So in essence, all we got to do is fix the scaling setting once and your timeline actually behaves the way it should. If this saved you guys time, give it a like. And if you're editing in Resolve and want more honest real world tips, then hit that subscribe button right there. And next week, I'm going to be diving into a series over traveling as a filmmaker. Literally, you do not want to miss it because I feel like this is a frustration a lot of us have.